All right. And we are not live actually, and we are recording that. So, hello everyone. Welcome to episode 94 of Global Citizens. My name is Calvin. I am the show's host, and I am, of course, its creator. So, my guest for today. Oh, before introduce her, I want to ask you guys, have you ever wondered how you can build a thriving multicultural family amidst numerous challenges that came with it? So my guest for today is going to share her own experience, her own coaching practices with her husband, and how she actually deal with their intercultural family. So my guest for today is Miss Cheyanne Cleyman. So from this is actually from her husband's recount or from their blog. Okay, so if there's anything, you can clarify it with them. So from a meet cute at a wedding of a mutual friend in a castle in the Netherlands to a lunch in the old city center of Ghent at Belgium, Cheyenne and her husband, Kim, shared their experiences raising a blended Belgian American family, sharing how they thrive through challenges of raising two kids in two different cultures through their blog, website, online coaching program, and a host hosted by Cheyenne herself, the Mom Matters podcast. So this is guided by their passion to help other multicultural step families turn their own obstacle into opportunities for transformation. So without further ado, I will now pass the question back to Cheyenne. So how are you?
Wow. After that kind of an intro, I feel like I'm on the Oscars. Like you just you're my hype man, Kelvin. Thank you. Wow. That's something I'm thinking about in the future. I may need a publicist, and I think I know who I'm going to ask for first. But thank you. Thank you so much for having me and our story, my family, here on your podcast. And thank you everyone for watching. Anyone who has any little bit of a multicultural background, I look forward to sharing my story, and hopefully that you guys can see a little bit of your story in mine, and that we can inspire and encourage one another. So thank you for having me.
Just for the record, my rate is pretty reasonable, so don't worry about that.
Awesome. Happy to know that.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So Cheyenne's history, as I mentioned earlier, is from a meet cute, and she is now with her husband Kim, whom due to the how technology is unpredictable, I actually tried to make it into so that she is the main guest today. But I hope if it's possible, maybe he can make a cameo later on, or if not, I will definitely give a shout out to him on my IGTV later on. So yeah, without further ado, we will just jump into the very first question. So Cheyenne, I actually want to ask you this because this is your main area. Yeah. How do you define family? Is it by bond or by blood? Do you mind sharing with us on that?
Absolutely. I think when I look at those two words, juxtaposition, blood and bond, I think in America, there's this phrase where it's like blood's thicker than water. And it tends to, I'm sure anyone who's maybe, it could be a multinational phrase, but I think a lot of people come to that understanding because we typically are raised in a family where we share blood. And that's where we start to define family and see family. But I think anyone listening to this podcast and anyone who's lived maybe a few decades in this life sees that you start to then develop a bond differently with even different people within your blood family. And then sometimes your blood family altogether doesn't feel like that sense of family. And so that's why I would say family is more, to me, is more of a bond and a feeling, and something that it's a connection that you have with someone. For me, I have lived many years away from my immediate family. I was actually born in New York, in the States, and then traveled about what would be about 4,000 kilometers away to the state of Florida with just my parents. And then I moved by myself away from my parents after university to California. So I am a big family kind of person, meaning I love connection. I love, being around people. I love just the energy that being around other people bring. And that, of course, that encouragement and that connection people bring. But when I was away from my blood blood family, I had to learn to have a sense of family with the people that were around me. And a lot of times that did come from a bond, from whether it was mutual and shared experiences, whether it was traditions that we held. For me, I'm a Christian, so many of my, what I would say family would come from my shared faith experiences or beliefs with people. And even so much that I call a lot of my girlfriends that are Christians, I call them my sister. And sometimes I have to clarify that for people like, wait, I thought you only had like one sister. I'm like, well, yeah, blood wise, but these are my other sisters from another mister. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, as you guys will learn further on in this podcast, I myself find myself now in my mid-30s as a stepmom. And so I do literally have a family member that I would consider to be closer than most blood, sometimes relatives, as I do care for this child. I raise her in my home, and yet we don't share blood. So it's our bond that has become thicker than blood in our situation, our family.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right. For those of you who are watching this for the very first time, Global Citizens is an online platform that primarily advocated third culture kids, since reason being is, well, I am one. So I'm much more biased to it. So, well, whatever you want to say, I don't really care on that since this is my show. However, along with that, I also want it to be a platform as a representation for any kind of a multicultural lifestyle, or those who, like, for example, we have Cheyanne's case. She's actually a stepmom of a beautiful young lady who is actually from Belgium, who from her own husband. So along with that, I also want it to be a represent form of people's advocacy, so that you understand that this kind of intercultural lifestyle is not an extended holiday. It's not a vacation whereby you can see some beautiful place in Thailand and you thought, oh, you live in there, it's beautiful. No, it's not, guys. There are a lot of cases of depression and a lot of cases of stress and, well, a lot of misunderstanding. It's because you thought that this kind of life is beautiful, it's easy, it's nice to look at, but it's not. There's a lot of cases whereby you have to change who you are, how you speak, what you believe in, simply is because you just want to fit in. So this is actually why I do this thing, and I'm glad enough that I've actually reached up to 94 episodes. So yeah, do look forward because we are reaching to 100 by the end of this year. So yeah, that's something to be proud of. And yeah, sorry, Sharon, I will pass back the spotlight to you. Yeah. All right.
Oh, that's okay. I'm instantly even more intrigued. I'm just over here saying, amen. Yes, yes, more, Kelvin, more of what you say. You have such a beautiful, strong platform. And I think so many people are being blessed from it. So thank you.
You're most welcome. Yeah, I really hope I get to do something even further from it. But yeah, I mean, you're the star for this particular podcast, so we will pass it back to you again. All right. Yeah, I actually, of course, I have spoken with you a little bit before we started, and I read some of your blog entries, and I've actually seen some of your contents on Instagram. But do you mind sharing with us, though, how you actually started this global step family? How it started for the first place? I mean, I've already given the introduction, but I might have missed out a thing or two. So as I said, I got this from your husband's website.
Yes.
So I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it could be from one side. Maybe let's see from your
Yes. Well, it was perfect timing because my husband just walked in the room. So I'll get a lot of verification, making sure I'm right on the point. But you did a fantastic job. My husband represented us well, but as can be stereotypical with men, not always, but they sometimes kind of give the abridged version where I'm more of the details. Like, yeah, this is what really happened. Yeah, you're there. You get what
I share the same gender. I share the same gender, and
you can understand. Yeah, yep. Our joke in our family is long story short becomes me. I'm a short story long. So I will try to get to the point here. But basically you did a great job. The warm up was that we did meet at a mutual friend's wedding. I was coming here to Belgium from California for what I thought was just a week long. I was actually coming to surprise a friend that I hadn't seen in about 17 years at that point. She was a friend I'd met in French class back in Florida when I was in high school. And she's Belgian, I'm American. They're not exactly right next door to each other. So I'd only seen her 2 times since high school. But we had planned a surprise visit with her fiance and her best friend that I would come to the wedding. And I literally showed up on her doorstep the day of the wedding. She opened the door in her wedding dress and boom, there I was. And here I thought she was the one getting the surprise, but I never imagined the surprise that I would get that, about 8 hours later, truly in the foyer of a castle, I see this gorgeous hunk of a man that looked just like Thor to me, strapping guy, long blonde hair, twinkly green eyes, and I'm just like, whoa, who's that? But what began in a castle continued, the rest of the night. We ended up talking and dancing, and the next day we spent on an excursion throughout the countryside in the Netherlands. We actually were in the reception, the party was in the Netherlands. So we already had that crossing borders, experiencing another country together. And we had a real deep conversation to the point where later on that week, as you shared, we had our first date in Ghent, to which if anyone ever wants to come follow my blog, I actually wore a dress on that date that sorry, I'm still here, earthquake. But a dress that I had bought 2 years previously that I hung on my door, that I had prayed and spoken out and said, I'm going to wear that dress on my first date with my husband. Not knowing, how would I know this guy that I would meet someday would be my husband? And how funny that I put it in my suitcase going to Belgium, not even knowing my husband Kim existed. So we did wear it. I wore that dress that day, and we both knew something was different, something we had never met a person like each other before. So without kind of getting too much in our heads, like, okay, so how's this going to work? Because I'm American. I'm a single young woman pursuing a career in Los Angeles as an actress and a host. I had been taking a break on that for some time. I had my own business with health and fitness coaching and dog walking. And then my husband was a teacher here and he had a daughter. But we knew something, we wanted to take that leap of faith. And so for when I went home a few days later, I flew away from Europe, went back home to California. And then for the next 3.5 months, we actually dated long distance through a very similar platform that we're talking on right now. It was FaceTime, face to face on a screen. We spent hours dating, unlike any dating we'd ever experienced in life before, where you kind of go out to dinner and watch a movie and you don't necessarily talk so much. When all we had was talking, we went deep, and we kind of took that deep dive really quickly, so that when he came to visit my family 3.5 months later, it wasn't just a visit. We actually ended up getting married during that trip. So if you guys are following along on the timeline, within 4 months of meeting my husband, we actually had gotten married. And then about 2 months later, I had to stay in the US after we got married to process visas. And I'm sure some of you global citizens understand that. Had to get all my paperwork taken care of. But then I immigrated to Belgium without any previous knowledge of the language of Dutch, which is the language here, about the culture, or had never even actually met his daughter at that point. We had FaceTime, but I really just jumped both feet into this family. And so within a matter of 6 months, my life dramatically changed from meeting him to all of a sudden I was a new wife and a new mother in a foreign country. That's a lot.
It's a lot, but well, surprisingly, it's not the most surprising story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't know one person who is a test tube baby with multiple half siblings since they actually met up. And actually that's another story for another time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a lot for a person who has never experienced it. And the thing is that for your case, it's a transition from somebody who is living her life, just trying to figure things out, still doing it, and then suddenly you are a mom. Marriage itself is already confusing in the start.
Yeah.
You become a mom immediately. That is, I don't know, just learning how to drive a car, and then suddenly you got a Ferrari. You need to drive it.
Yeah.
In an incredibly narrow road that only fits the car.
Yeah.
So that's
so true.
That's
so true. And a Ferrari you want to take good care of too, because it's precious, right? It is like wow, top of the line, as is a child, right? It's like, you don't want to mess this child up. And yet, how do I do this? It's all in Italian. Like, how do I figure this out? Right. Yeah.
Kind of. Okay, okay. That's yeah. I get where you're coming from. I mean, well, I for being a new mom, at least you learn along the way. You learn that maybe it's not perfect, but for your case, it's like a product that's in a sense is on its own a developing
Mm-hmm.
product, and this is
Mm-hmm.
not a product. This is a life, and
Right.
all of a sudden you have to take responsibility of it, and that
Mm-hmm.
is definitely not an easy thing to do. So first off, I need to give you a round of applause because I actually saw one of your video whereby I think there are people who has ever questioned you before. Are you really a mom just because
Mm-hmm.
you're a stepmom? So first off, let me give you a round of applause. And to those who are saying it, yes, she is a mom. So please stop telling that. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Cheyenne. So I actually want to jump in on your. Mind if I ask, would you call her your stepdaughter, or you are now just gonna call her your daughter? Because I know,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I think in my heart, she's my daughter, but in respect for her mother, who is still alive and in the picture, I do typically refer to her publicly as my bonus daughter.
Fair enough. Okay, that
Mhm.
works. So yeah, do you mind sharing with us though, what was the most difficult thing to start your with your daughter when you first started?
Sure.
Because the thing is that not on how young was she when you first met her?
She was 9.
Oh dear. Okay, 9 years old. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
So how do you mind sharing with us like the first maybe a few months or at least if you can, because from what I know, usually it takes 2 years to adjust to a new culture. So for your case though, how was the first interaction with her? Is because I know you don't speak Dutch. So for one thing is that as you mentioned, Dutch is Belgium's primary language. So how was the first interaction with her? Because you don't speak the language at all, and all of a sudden, this is your daughter. So how was the
Sure.
first interaction with her?
Yeah, I think right away I went into maybe the situation a little naive. I had nannied for about 10 years, so I knew in a way what it was like to physically care for kids. I knew what it was like to have love for children that weren't biologically your own. So I think I went in knowing, like, gosh, and I really did kind of fall in love with her separately from um, being around her, because we tried to talk on the phone. Her dad would talk so much about her. My husband proclaims every single day and says that he is the man he is because of the fact he's a girl dad, because he has a child. And he says, like, as much as we can look in hindsight and think, what would life have been like had you met me before I had a daughter? Because there is a lot of struggles, there's a lot of obstacles in a step family life. But he said, but I could say I wouldn't be the man that you fell in love with if I wasn't a dad. So, it's like that's why from the beginning I saw her as a bonus, that she was a bonus blessing to my life. But, like I shared, I came into her life when she was 9. And actually, when I moved here, she had a birthday. So when we actually first met, she had already turned 10. And, the first couple months, and honestly, I'll even say to this day, there's still some things that are definitely not as hard, but there's still some things that hasn't necessarily changed. But in the beginning, it was really hard just to communicate to her. It was just very much a challenge, because at that point, she didn't know any English and I didn't know any Dutch. So it really was just awkward, kind of being in a room with her and wanting this like organic relationship to grow, but not knowing what's the best way that I can do that. And, you could tell she was very hesitant. I think there was a lot going on in her mind, because her mom is also still in her life, and her mom had a lot of hesitations about her dad getting married so quickly, so soon. I don't know this woman. So I think a lot of those fears were passed on to her as well. And so by far in the beginning, it was not just the overwhelming, obstacle of, now becoming a mom. Like you said, when you're pregnant and you have a baby, you like grow into the role, and you're 9 months, you get to anticipate and grow. And then you get to grow with this child, where now I inherited this child that had 9-10 years of development before me. Her values were completely different. Her beliefs were completely different. And then her language, she didn't know how to ask me anything. She didn't know how to say anything to me. My husband, bless his heart, was a constant translator. Sometimes we'd have simple questions, kind of like, what do you want for dinner? And they would take 10 minutes because there would be, Dutch going there, English going there. I remember sitting at the table and just having to sit and be in peace to like let them communicate and just have an organic conversation, where I just kind of sat there feeling very isolated and alone in the beginning, of course, because I also didn't know how to process this. I didn't know, like, is this how it's always going to be? Like, I feel so unlike myself. But organically, my bonus daughter and I found a way. We started very much with physical things. So it was, what are things we can do that you don't need language? And so we would cook together. I actually immigrated from the States to Europe with my dog. He's a little 10-pound Chihuahua. So he was a great in-between conversationalist. We both spoke dog, like, hey, let's go for a walk. You, me, walk the dog, so we did a lot of that in the beginning. And then I'd say organically, now she's 12 and a half. So she's kind of in that like preteen stage. And crazy enough, she still actually doesn't speak English. We work on that with her, but it's a little bit of, we feel just a little bit of a fear thing there. But she does understand about 80-90% of English now. And I maybe can understand and speak about 60% in Dutch. So that's been a great way we've been able to find each other, is by overcoming the language barriers.
Yeah, hit me up when she's 60. That's gonna be another headache.
I will. I'll come back on here. We'll have a whole nother conversation.
Yep. Yeah, I actually had a discussion with Sunday the last time. So because for her, she already has she has two boys, and they're gonna be entering the age whereby TCK would start questioning stuff. So yeah. Let me know if you need help on that. By the time she's 16, wait, how old is she now?
12 and a half.
12 and a half. Wonderful. Okay, I got 4 more years, so that's good.
Yeah, some people tell me that, especially whether it comes to her or even my husband's ex, when I say, I hate that I can't understand them. And some people are like, no, like that can be a blessing. It's good sometimes when you can just be like, oh, I don't know what she's saying. Okay.
Yeah, as long as somebody is smiling, okay. That's a good sign.
Yep.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, all right, exactly.
All right. Okay. So now you have a young son too, if I'm not mistaken, right? So congratulations.
Yes, we do. Thank you. He's 14 months today, actually.
Oh, is that his birthday?
14 months. So he's a year and 2 months.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Okay. So yeah, for now you are dividing your life between US and Belgium. And well, maybe there could be other opportunities down the line for more family, for more countries that could be a part of your family. Yeah. So, but for right now, is what do you feel has been you have created as an anchor to your family? What keeps it steady? Is because, for one thing, you have a stepdaughter who is a Belgian. For one thing, you are an American citizen, and of course, your husband's ex, and there will be extended families in between and everything. Though, what has been supporting an anchor for your family so far, for the household?
Yeah. For my specific family back in the States, we organically, once my son was born, we started to FaceTime every day with my parents. So it's now, it wasn't something we were planning on doing, because when I first moved here, we would FaceTime, but maybe twice a week, and now he is, so my parents also, they've been together for 40 years, but my dad was married before. So I have two half siblings myself. So my dad has biologically 9 grandchildren, but from my mom, who I'm my parents' only child, my son is her first biological grandchild. So I think he's very extra special for them, being that I'm my mom's only child, her only baby. So it became really organic that when he was born, they just didn't want to miss a moment. They didn't want to miss any of the, the crawling, the first words, the first steps, even just the silly things like, wow, look at, he's eating spaghetti for the first time. So that's a way that I think the anchor that we stay connected and grounded to my family is we make sure that we have FaceTime dates, even if it's for 5 minutes, even if it's inconvenient. Just that we make that time. And I do that with friends and family as well. And I think for us, we're willing to get uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is, for instance, last year, I know we all have lived through a global pandemic. And I gave birth to our son actually at home, here in our home. That was planned. That wasn't an accidental, I didn't make it to the hospital. No, that was planned. But 2 weeks into the lockdown. So all of a sudden this global pandemic happened. We had our child. So it was like, now how do I introduce my child? How do I bring my child my culture, but also to his family, to my family in the States? So there have been 2 times already that I've traveled to the States alone with a baby, which I know many people think, oh my gosh, you're crazy, or why would you do that? But for me, it's important to keep that anchor, that solid foundation for myself and my son, though, to always, if possible, to go back to his culture, to go back to my culture, to go back to our roots as often as possible, even if it means uncomfortability, even if it means I have to do some things that I don't like all the time, or meaning I have to be separated from my husband. It's worth it, because in the end, I know that those are going to be almost like little beacons of hope for me, like to feel that connection to my culture, and for my son too, so that he won't miss that part of his American side as well.
Okay. Yeah, I can totally relate to that, because I actually was separate from my own birth culture for years. And when I go back and forth between Singapore and Indonesia growing up. But the thing is that I am much more inclined towards Singapore's culture. In fact, I'm so ingrained into it that I consider myself a Singaporean. And the thing, to the point that when I actually mentioned the same kind of issue, then people was wondering, is like, dude, you are Indonesian, you know that? So I'm like, oh yeah, wait, I forgot about that. But yeah, I can relate to that. And I think that's the step in the right direction, is because when you are exposing a young child to all the cultures that they are supposed to be a part of, or even what is outside of their norm, it's something that helps them to develop their personality. And in fact, it increased their perspective. So kudos to you on that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. And also in our home, I guess I must add, is that we know that the reality, especially with a pandemic, for instance, there just wasn't the ability for us to go whenever we wanted. I know a lot of families around the world, they've been physically separated from their families because of lockdowns, because of lack of transporting, being able to get to their families. So besides, I guess, connecting to our family in our home, oh, can you still see me? Yeah.
Yep.
Besides connecting to our family in our own home, we also do things where we try to bring, because we're in Belgium, Belgian culture is around us. That's the culture that we're saturated with, because that's where we are. But the American culture, we have to actually bring into our home. So whether it's we purposely have an American food night, where we have tacos, or bring in the pizza or something, or we have a movie night where it's like quintessential American movies. Or we this year we're actually intending to hopefully celebrate Thanksgiving, which is a holiday in the U.S. we celebrate for when the first settlers came and the Native Americans helped them survive through the winter. And it's a big feast with a lot of food and some American football. So this year we're hoping to do that here with my husband's family, and it would be their first Thanksgiving.
Okay. I've never actually experienced Thanksgiving myself, actually, but yeah, I'm quite familiar with it. And if you're somebody, oh, by the way, just a little plug in, if you watch Friends reunion, there's a Friends reunion a few days ago. So if you don't know what's Thanksgiving, do check it out because their ad one is actually during Thanksgiving in the past.
Awesome.
They are already off the air for over 17 years. So wow, that was a long time. Okay.
Amazing. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Oh, sorry. I accidentally pressed my camera. Okay.
No worries.
Okay. So I actually want to get back the question to you again now. So you have been away from the US now, I think around 3 years, yeah, if I recall correctly.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you is this, what do you feel has been the blessing so far of living away from home as in the term and the namesake of my show, the original namesake, the story is I think some of you have heard it before, is that what do you feel has been its blessing so far living this life? And do you mind sharing with us both pros and cons? And along with that, though, when you actually repatriate, let's say maybe for holidays, you actually come back to visit your family in the US. Does the feeling seems any different, or is it just like riding a bicycle kind of moment?
Oh man, Calvin, these are such good questions. Questions that we've actually talked a lot about in our home. And I mean, to start off with, what's the blessing of living abroad and being an expat? And I think first and foremost, I have loved getting to discover myself. And I say that as having been actually quite a self-aware person in the US, but only by putting myself in a new set of circumstances have I gotten to know this new person, which can be very scary and it can feel very isolating, can feel like you don't know who this person is that you're coming into and that you're becoming. But I feel like any blessing in life, if we ever really look at it, very often it does come in trial or in tribulation or in struggle. And that's what makes it so beautiful. That's how we can see the blessing. So I think for me, it's been such a blessing to be able to, one, become bilingual, because in the States, that is very, very rare, especially around a more typical white European background, American or even an African American. We don't often have those bilingual households, or if we have, generations from Europe or from African countries, it just gets lost over the time. So I think it's a huge blessing that I'm now basically bilingual and I'm able to pass that down to my children. I think to be just totally cliche American girl, I love that I can grow up or I can raise my kids, but also be around castles all the time. I mean, I feel like I'm in a fairy tale. So many people when my husband and I met said, "Oh, you met your prince." And I'm like, we live in a smaller 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, but I feel like it's my own castle and I'm here with my chivalrous prince, just because of the blessing of being around so much culture and so much history, especially so much American history derives from the old continent, from Europe, itself. So that's really been a huge, huge blessing. And I think just being around, people who think and act differently, even though there are a lot of similarities to the US, there's a lot of mindsets that are different, a lot of religious mindsets and thoughts and beliefs that are different. They have different concepts and different understandings on family. On marriage is very different here. So all those things have been blessings because they, one, I think, reveal the person that's within. Like I kind of like have to then decide, well, what do I think about this or how do I feel? And then it also, it helps me to figure out that person. I think that's the blessing too. When you're uncomfortable, not everyone has to adjust this way, but for me, it made me a stronger individual. It made me really kind of be proud of who I am and embrace my truth. Since I had so many truths around me and so many different beliefs, it helped me come to more of my own and be myself no matter where I'm at. And that didn't happen overnight. That was definitely a struggle. And I know something else you asked was, what does it feel like when I go back and forth to the States? And I've talked to a lot of expats about this. And it's amazing how every time I go back, it feels a little less normal, and it takes a little longer to adjust, which is so strange. It's so normal. Like you get it when you go to a different culture, like you're kind of expecting it. And that's why I think maybe going back to your own culture, it's so jarring because you're not expecting it. It still feels comfortable. It's still, especially in the beginning, it was like, I felt like when I got off the airplane, I was like, like I could finally breathe, like I could finally fully be myself. And but now it's interesting because my perspective on the world is being shaped by different people, and over time I'm starting to see like how the Belgians come to think and see and believe different things, that when I go back to the US, sometimes I'm surprised by things that my own family maybe have said for years, but all of a sudden I'm new, I'm different. I'm not no longer just American. I am now a global citizen. I am now a child, a person of the world. So I'm seeing things with new eyes. So it is nice to flow back in and feel like that comfort, but it's also, I think it's surprising the discomfort that I feel a little bit going back to my own culture.
Yeah, I get that. Welcome to my life for
Yeah.
28 years.
Yeah.
Everybody knows my age, so it's fine.
Oh gosh, you look like you're about 21. I love your skin. I can see that even through the screen.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I have a good lighting.
Nice.
Thank you. Yeah. All right then. So, okay. I mean, you document this through all of your contents, through websites and blogs, right? So this is actually a question that come from a recent memory of mine. So when I first started doing this, there was a guy who actually criticized it because it's too long and I don't have the attention span. A few months later, in fact, 6 months later, he actually asked me, "Hey, can I be on your show? I see there's a lot of expatriate, there's a lot of foreign bonds in your show, and I'm doing real estate, so I just want to be able to promote it to them." So yeah, I reject him politely, but in a sense, it is something that pissed me off a bit. Is because at first you don't want to take it into consideration, and then suddenly you want to take advantage of it. So I'm not going to reveal the person's name. I mean, we are still in the midst of pandemic, so I get it. It can be difficult for some people nowadays for your income. So let's not let's not let's not screw anybody out just because of a certain things that happened in the past. But for your question, Cheyanne, I want to ask though is that what has been the pros and cons though for your podcast, the Mom Matters podcast, or documenting the life of the Cleymans on social media? What kind of positivity, and yet to be fair, the negative part about it? Because when you put your life on social media, everybody can see it, and some people may disagree, some people may agree. That is their story. But the thing is, there can be some people who can be incredibly judgmental about it. And if you don't mind, do you mind sharing with us about it?
Absolutely. Oh, my pleasure. Calvin had mentioned that a podcast, I also do one called Moms Matter. And that came out of just a desire to give moms a voice and a story. So many women were sharing with me their stories because I was a new mom in the beginning of the pandemic. And honestly, even when I became a bonus mom, I had so many questions. And like you said, Calvin, so many women I would ask like, oh my gosh, have you shared what you shared with me privately? Like, have you shared this publicly? Because this is so good. Like other moms need to know this. And most often the response that I got was either a very humble mom that was like, oh, I don't know, is this like valid? I don't know. It's just what I think. But then more often than not, I would get moms that said, oh no, I've shared it. But yeah, we have in America, we say negative Nancy's. Like you got the people that jump on you, right?
No, it's called Karens, right?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Karen, the
I'm
Karens.
not sure if there's still a term though. But yeah, I know the Karen part.
Yeah. If you guys don't know the Karen thing, maybe you're way younger than us because I know the Karen reference. But yeah, you have people that jump all over you and judge you. And so that was why I actually started my podcast. And a pro and con. So I will say, Calvin, I'm not sure if you know this about me. If you go really deep dive and do like an Instagram stalking of my personal Instagram, you'll see that I've been actually sharing my life on social for about 12, I think 13 years. I started with YouTube, all when it came to my weight loss journey. I used to be about 45 kilos heavier. So for Americans, that's about
I
100,
think you were in
110
one TLC
pounds.
show, right, before, if I'm not mistaken?
I was, yes. I was on it's a TLC show called Fat Chance. So you can actually go on TLC.com, and in some countries you can view it, some it's hard to get, but it's called Fat Chance. And the premise was that all of us on the show, we each had our own episode, and it took through a 4-month journey of us shedding our weight and like getting the courage to basically reveal ourselves and our feelings towards a crush, towards a romantic interest. So dun, dun, dun. But it was really, it was great. And so before then I started sharing, and I found out very early on how vicious people can be on the internet. And it was something that, especially when you're sharing a weight loss story, is something that people judge so quickly anyways. It was something that I had some highs and lows, something I had to grow into. But again, when I started, it was mostly just YouTube, and then Twitter came out, and then Facebook, and then Instagram and Snapchat, and all these platforms. The more you could share, but like you said, the more negativity that you could get. And I think that's important for people to know. What you share out there, we do have to realize and know, and just understand that it is up for public consumption. And not everyone's going to see what we post out there with our best intention. Not everyone's going to see it in that positive light. And I think something my husband has actually helped me see a lot, because now we're sharing quite personal stuff, our own family's struggles and battles of being a multicultural family, but also being a step family, and the trials that come with that. But my husband said, when someone comes at you negatively, you have to remember that it's actually like a mirror. It's reflecting back on them. Like, it's showing more about them than it is you. And like you said, Calvin, it's like, it's their perspective, it's their truth. And that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean that it's not fun. I think some of our hardest critiques recently have come from my bonus daughter's mother and her family. And some of them have either messaged us privately attacking, or some of them have straight up gone on our social and actually write negative comments. And that's not easy. That's not easy when you're trying to do something honest and good and put good out in the world, and the impact maybe you're making. And it's amazing how you could get 10 comments of positive goodwill and thankfulness, and you get that one negative, nasty comment. And we just realized we can't let that ruin our day, or stop us from what we're doing, and those are just, I think it's just the reality of social, that when you open yourself up, that there are hopefully way more people that you can affect positively than negatively. But the criticism is going to come, and all you can do, I think, is just like block and bless them, block them, bless them. Like, I wish you goodwill. I wish the best for you, love and light, but can't let it affect you. Can't rain on your parade.
Yeah, really. I just take it as a compliment, actually, is because
yeah.
It's actually funny enough. If those of you who have been following me on my social media, I'm a big wrestling fan, so that's another story. Yeah, in fact, last year I was invited to a wrestling podcast somehow, so that was fun. Love those guys. So the thing is that there was one advice, is that it doesn't matter about your positive or your negative. What matters is the reaction. If people cheered with you or boo at you, then you've done your job. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
I take that as one of a credo to actually keep on doing this. A man who actually inspired one of the show's creation is actually on episode 30 of this show. His name is Eric Fong. He actually taught me when I first started. Don't look at the number of viewers. Don't think of the number of money that you're gonna make. Think of the impact that you give. If there's one person who look at what you are doing and say thank you, or even if they just appreciate what you're doing, you've done your job. So I think that's a positive mindset that you are having in approaching this. So keep going.
Thank you. Here, you as well. It's a really beautiful statement that you said it was episode 30, because I want to go back and watch that, because it sounds like it was a good interview.
I hope I got the right episode. I hope I got the right episode, but I remember it's 30. But yeah, the guy's name is, I believe, is the correct one. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, sorry, not I think it's the correct guy. So okay, moving on. Should I edit that?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. I'm just gonna keep it.
Either or, maybe someone out there is meant to go listen to that episode, whatever episode 30 is. It's worth it. It's worth going to check it out.
Thank you, thank you. All right, Cheyanne, I have two final questions for you now.
Okay.
So if you could create a character or even a show to dispel the image of a stepmom or living in Europe outside after coming from the US, what would it be? Because I've never seen a show about stepmom that is portrayed in a more positive outcome. I mean, there are some, but I've never seen one that is actually brought the reality behind it. Because, like I said in the beginning, you are a mom at the end of the day. You take care of your husband's young, beautiful daughter. You take care of your own son, actually, from your marriage, and you are still You are still treating both of them as the same. They're still both of them are your children. But the thing is that there's of course comes with the mental challenges of it, and of course there's also toll from it. So yeah, what would you want to create to dispel this kind of perception actually? And of course, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is not an extended holiday. Okay, this is our life on a daily basis. So yeah, do you mind sharing with us on that? From
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, I love this question because you're so right. I think when any of us think of a stepmom and think of even if we ourselves had never had a stepmom or don't know any stepmoms, I think our mindset or what we think about stepmoms unfortunately comes from TV and films, right? And so often we think back to that Disney quintessential, like, first of all, Snow White, her stepmom, like tried to kill her because she couldn't deal with the fact that she was more beautiful than her. And then you have Cinderella's stepmother that had those awful stepsisters that she put above her own bonus or stepdaughter and was just evil and mean. And so I think we grow up with that image. And I think it's twofold. I think the kids or even the new spouses, they have that image of what a stepmom could be or maybe is supposed to be. And then the women themselves, because my husband and I, we are multicultural step family coaches. So we work a lot with couples, and I primarily focus a lot and pour into the hearts and lives of the stepmoms. And so many of the stepmoms say, like, it's hard because it's like you want to live up to a different expectation, but then there's this expectation that people put on you. And it's really hard to fight against it all the time, whether it's one we have ourselves or one someone else has put there. Because you can imagine nobody grows up and says, I want to be a stepmom. It's just like nobody grows up and says, I want to be divorced. It's like we're kind of just trying to make the best of a tough situation and a challenging situation. So I think for me, if I could create a character, I mean, gosh, I would want somebody that shockingly looks like any other mom, like a warm, a loving, a nurturing woman. And in fact, I'm happy. I feel like I have more validity now because I started talking about this when I was just a stepmom, but now I'm also a biological mother. And I want to show that like stepmoms, they actually, if anything, sometimes I would say have a harder job being a stepmom versus a mom. Even though I have to take care of my son 24/7, he is a baby. And I mean, I never had to nurse my stepdaughter. I never had to deal with her temper tantrums. I did meet her later in life, but there is this unconditional love that my son will always have for me that my stepdaughter may not. Her love in many ways is conditional. I think as stepkids, they have a struggle with loyalty, feeling like, who am I loyal to? Can I love this new mom of mine while not being disrespectful to my biological mom, and the going back and forth. So I think as stepmoms, I would want a character to paint them as being these freaking like Wonder Woman that step out and are this beautiful, unconditionally loving person that no matter how they're treated, that they still decide to do the right thing. And, I think too, that just press on and are that friend in an awkward situation, that they would be there no matter what for those kids. Cause that's the kind of stepmom I am. But even more importantly, these are the stepmoms that I meet behind screens, in emails, on Instagram messages every single day. These are the real stepmoms of the world, and that's what I want the world to see.
Okay, sorry. What about the second part, the one where people are experiencing life from maybe US to Europe or maybe outside of the border? Because this particular question is something that I've asked several times. Is because growing up, US seems like the beacon of the world, but now, well, we all know what happened throughout the entire pandemic. What is happening now? I'm sorry, but it looks what was the country that was considered at one point a beacon of the world really looks like an embarrassment now. And I mean, time will heal wounds, but the thing is that reputation is something that you just damage just by one negativity. You can do 100 positive, one negativity can damage it. So yeah, for one thing, as you mentioned, you have spent time in outside of US now in Belgium for going to be a third year, and I hope it will be quite a while. So, what new perspective have you learned about your second home? And also, what do you feel though that you hope that in the US people can be much more receptive of?
Yeah. I think that it goes both ways, being that I hope that more understanding is had on both sides, just meaning whether people are, I feel like you said, I've traveled quite a bit in my life, and I know that the US is known worldwide, world around. And I think something as an American that actually honestly is hard for me and grieves my heart is that so many billions of people know about the US, but only a fraction of them will ever actually travel there themselves. So many are getting to know, the US culture probably through a screen. And I would just remind people that as much as nobody can fully know you through the screen, nobody can fully know the US through the screen either. That there is a lot of, I think something I had to deal with a lot, and I know I'm not going to get into politics, but something we had to deal with a lot here through the elections while I was here is that everyone was judging the US by one man or by what they were seeing on the TV. And I would say, hey, it's not 100% like that. It is what the news is reporting. And unfortunately, I think we can all see that sometimes news or just anything we see on whether it's TV or news reports, they can be biased as much as they try not to be biased. So I would encourage people that to just kind of try to keep an open mind. And if you get a chance, especially since we're talking about the US, if you get a chance to meet an American, get to know them, ask them questions, just like if you would meet someone from anywhere. It'd be so wrong of me, Calvin, to meet someone like yourself from Singapore or Indonesia and have every kind of Asian a stereotype put on you. And so I would say the same with Americans. Try to keep your mind open. And it is hard because American...
I'm one of the least Asian you will ever met, even though I'm Asian. So...
Yeah. Which is probably fun though, when people get to know you, like you even said, people are like, wow, wait, so you're Indonesian, but you know what? I think everybody is who they want to be on the inside. I think it's like your culture is on your inside, not what's on the outside, or not even where you're born. Because my experience here in Europe is I've met a handful of Americans, and some of them are very anti-American, I hate to say, just basically they feel more comfortable here. They're like, nope, we wanted to leave. This is where we're at. I'll say in my experience, it's not, I'm the opposite. It's not that I'm anti-Belgian or anti-Europe, but I will say living here has made me actually even just more proud to be an American, because one thing that my husband and I have discovered through our life as a multicultural couple and family is we've realized that an American, something that's hard to understand across the world is Americans were kind of born with freedom written in our bones. It is such a spirit that's in us. So it's something that we do have a hard time sometimes listening to government and sometimes other people, which can be the downside of it. And so that's where I'd say that for me, it's helped me become, I think, a better balanced individual, because Americans, I think, can be very blunt. We're known around the world, I know, as being kind of very loud, obnoxious, not always the most respectful people. But so for me, it's caused me to go within more, listen deeper, but also still let that freedom ring in my heart, I think, from wherever I'm at, and have that soul in me, no matter where I live in the world.
Yep, fair enough. All right. Okay, this is going to be your last question, actually.
Dun, dun, dun.
Don't worry. Yeah, so what would you advise or tell yourself from 2018 when you were about to undertake this roller coaster life? And if you don't mind, can you adjust your perspective to somebody who could be going to or will be going through this particular lifestyle of becoming a stepmom and raising a global family itself? So yeah.
Absolutely. So, to the women or the men out there that are becoming step parents, perhaps specifically, or at the very least, having a multicultural family, potentially living in a country separate of your own, I would say completely lean into the process, meaning jump full feet in, and knowing that your life is going to change dramatically. And sometimes it's going to change suddenly. And there's going to be so many new things around you that you're probably going to discover, not just about the culture that you didn't know before, but also about yourself. And just know that that's totally normal. And only through time and connection with the people that are closest with you, and also with yourself, will it get better. You know, for me, I had so much change at once. Within a year, I became a new immigrant. I became someone who was learning a second language. I became a wife, a stepmom, and then I was pregnant for the first time and became a mom in a different country with none of my family during a global pandemic. So I went through a lot of new and a lot of change. And all I can say is what helped me is by fully leaning in and having those moments where I needed a breakdown. You know, I think we can try to be so strong, especially as parents, whether you're biological or a step parent. I think we know that we need to be strong for the kids, but for me, strength so often is shown in vulnerability. So for me, I needed to have those moments where I could just cry. I could just let it go. I, like Kelvin, you said earlier in the episode, depression is very strong, especially in expatriates, people going back and forth between culture. So I would say, like, one, really be real with your feelings. Don't try to hide them. Don't try to push them away. And besides having a healthy mindset of growth, also include people in on what you're going through. For me, I needed to surround myself with people that I trusted, which is hard when you move to a new country. You don't know who you can trust. You don't know who has similar mindsets to me. Again, I shared before that I'm a Christian, so I found a church and hoping that I would find people that we at least would have that similar faith. And I got to know people there, started spending time together, and then I found my cozier group of people. So I would say, if that's you and you're living in another culture, find maybe a group of moms. Find a step family group. If you can't, come find us on Instagram. We would love to love on you. But if you find maybe a religious, center that you align your heart with, or even just getting to know maybe parents at your kids' school, find connection, find community, if at best in person, or of course with the blessing of social media, connect with other people, and just know that it's going to be the ride of your life, because you really are going to be discovering a completely new person that's going to come out of this. But I really would say that at the end of the day, you are going to just be so amazed. If you fully accept this opportunity, you're going to be amazed at the person that you become, and you're going to grow probably more than you could have ever expected.
Well said. All right.
Thank you.
So that's actually all the questions I have. So before I end, I actually need to give a shout out, since apologies, we can't go live on Facebook, is because my software is having an issue. So this one is not on me. Yeah, I actually need to mention two of my alumni who has been really, really supportive of mine. Ben Vogel, thanks a lot, buddy, and Miss Kathy Johnson. So I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves in the US and in Singapore. And yeah, so Well, this will be on my Instagram TV and it will be on my YouTube later on. So for those of you who are interested to reach out, please reach out to Cheyanne or through their Instagram page, the Cleymans, or you can also go through their website. So last but definitely not least, thank you so much, Cheyanne, for taking the time to come here today. Special shout out also to your husband Kim. I know he can't be here. Is he here? Is he there?
He is. He's on the other side of the room. Maybe I can get him to make a quick cameo. Hey, baby, can you come here for a second? Can you do a quick cameo so people can see the 2-for-1 combo here? I am so Kimming you. That's our little friend, because his name is Kim here. We want to make you a last little bit cameo here on the podcast so people can see you. Little quick. Without further ado, everyone, this is the love of my life, the one and only Kim Cleyman.
Hello.
There he is. This is
Hi.
Calvin.
Hi.
Pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Yeah. Yeah. Your wife has said nothing but wonderful things about you today.
Thank you.
All right.
It's all true. Nothing I wouldn't but say to your face, of course, too. So we just had an awesome podcast, and I was talking a lot about all good things that when you tune in, you'll hear everything else.